after years of pleading, the Paper Mario Thousand Year Door remake is here. And this is such a weird review to make. One, because I'm reviewing a game I already reviewed years ago. Wow, that video is horrible. So, in the true style of this, we're gonna remake a video. Anyway, on to gameplay. I mean, it's Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. What hasn't been said about its gameplay? No, seriously, the game's 20 years old and very much well loved. But for those who aren't aware, it's a really good mix between an action game and a turn-based RPG. Since every single turn you make a choice and then have to input action commands to do more damage or take a less. And that's at its very basic systems before acknowledging things like the audience system, which is entirely unique to this game, even among other Paper Mario likes. To keep it simple, you have an audience. The better you do, the larger it grows, and they can interact with you. You can have hecklers who attack you from their seats, or people who decide to throw items out to help you in battle. And that's before we get to stage malfunctions. Ceiling lights can just fall down on you. And topped it off with a really tight and fun combat system, and it's incredible. And that's before we talk about the honestly really good overworld navigation. Mario himself is a bit slow for my liking, but using your powers and the different curses to navigate through areas is really fun, and almost every single movement upgrade you get makes perfect sense with this being a world made of paper. The gameplay is fun in both facets, and I really enjoy it, and I'm glad to be back in this world. And you may be confused by the fact I praised the paper-themed power-ups. Well, a lot of Paper Mario fans will complain about the newer games focusing too much on the paper gimmicks. My answer to that question is it's more of an aesthetic choice to what would have been upgrades that are there anyway compared to the newer ones where it's the central point. Given I haven't really played any of the new Paper Mario games just because they didn't interest me. But the remake itself does have the frame rate issue. Look, I'm gonna keep this short, but the original GameCube version ran at 60 FPS while the new Switch version runs at 30. Which normally wouldn't be a big deal for an RPG. I mean, it runs better than Scarlet and Violet, but since this game has timing-based commands, it really throws off your timing, and there have been multiple instances where it just felt like my inputs got eaten by the controller. And it can be really annoying, especially when you directly have the original version to compare it to. But I don't think this would have been an issue if this was a brand new game. Or not nearly as much of one. Either way, I need to talk about the visuals. This game looks incredible on the Switch. Genuinely, the reason I chose Chapter 4 background footage for this entire thing is just so I can show you Creepy Steeple. It looks gorgeous. When I first saw the trailer, it blew me away because, frankly, I didn't think a Switch game could look this good. Given I didn't think in a million years we'd actually get a remake of this game. But either way, anyway, on to the writing. Honestly, there isn't much I can say without spoiling it. But this game is great. It's hilarious, it's charming, it is well written and well foreshadowed. It's a game that I am revisiting the story despite knowing everything that's gonna happen, something that I usually don't do. Overall, the game's great, but now time to compare some things between the original and the remake. First up, music. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I do not like the new versions of the old tracks. I think some of them are improvement, but for the most part, I'd rather just listen to the originals. But that's not a problem. It's an option. There's a super cheap and easy to get badge you can obtain incredibly early that just replaces the music with the GameCube tracks. And I don't think the new tracks are bad necessarily, just not for me. Especially compared to the originals. Here, I'll play a few. And don't get me wrong, there are some improvements in my opinion, but overall I just prefer the originals. Again, new ones are not bad, and if you enjoy them, more power to you, but I prefer the originals. And that isn't an issue, especially since the Nostalgic Tunes badge existed. Frankly, if it wasn't there, regardless of which soundtrack I liked, I would have requested it to be added in a free update. Either way, I think it's finally time to fully talk about the changes they made in the remake. For better and for worse. Some of the changes are pretty simple, like the fact that the catcalling to Goombella got changed and replaced. Which, honestly, kinda sucks. Because those guys are supposed to be buttholes, and they kinda just went from sexist jerks to people not okay with breaking and entering. And then there's the actually controversial change. TLDR, this is Vivi. The changes relating to her story are probably very controversial, and Twitter is probably on fire. But honestly, I'm all for it. It's not really a change that's negative because it's just bringing the English release closer to the original intention of the story, which isn't bad. It's a more accurate translation and trans representation. I did not mean for that to rhyme. But I'd rather leave the discussion to if this is well implemented and good to the trans community, since this is their representation, not mine. Anyway, on to the less controversial and really minor cute touches. First up is this animation of Lord Crump fixing his folded ear. This was in the files of the GameCube version, it just never got used. And honestly, the remake's filled with a ton of stuff like this. I'm not going to cover it all, and if it's interesting to you, I highly recommend you watch a video that someone else made on the topic. Because there's so many tiny details and changes. It's incredible. And most of them are just these tiny little touches that make the game feel so much more alive. Another change I adore is the partner wheel. You can now just hold down a button to change partners on the fly, instead of going into the menu. Genuinely, that addition is amazing. I don't think I can go back to the original game anymore because of that alone. And the last major change worth discussing is Chapter 7. So, if you want to skip ahead, go ahead. And anybody who's played the original game knows for a fact what I'm talking about when I say Chapter 7. The General White Fetch Quest. And it's still here. And still required to beat the game. Great. Look, in all honesty, it's a lot better in the remake. All of the warp pipes in the warp hub bring you really close to the NPC you need to talk to. So, it's more just tedious and annoying instead of a waste of my time. But God, do I wish this just wasn't in the game anymore. I'm not sure how you could do it, but I'm certain there's some way, and almost anything would have been better than this. And the solution here is probably the best you could have gotten without heavily altering the sequence. But you're already remaking the whole game, so at that point, could you have remade this section? In the end, this is not only an incredible remake, but an incredible game that is deserving of fans of the original game to pick up, and I would highly recommend Thousand Year Door to anyone who hasn't played the game yet. If you're a fan of RPGs, this game should be something you play. But that's my opinion. What's yours? And I'll see you guys in the next one.